Hello, and maybe hello again for those of you who are wondering what the heck just happened a couple of minutes ago. I had one of those little technical glitches that occasionally happens, and probably would make my son-in-law laugh. He has this thing about old people and technology. But anyway, I'm back. And this is indeed Dr. G's ADHD chat, and this time we're going to stay on for a while. And like I've said many times before, this is a show trying to make the world safe for ADHD. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist in private practice. I see, well, at least half of my practice is probably ADHD with adults and children. And we do a lot of trying to educate people as well, especially parents. Well, that's partly what we're going to talk about today. But anyway, when I was in grad school, when I was studying to be a clinical psychologist, and I was taking all my courses and everything, I never heard about ADHD. I went through an APA approved, American Psychological Association approved program, and an approved residency program. Never once heard about ADHD. I was in a residency setting that included a fairly distinguished staff of psychologists, including a couple of guys who had gotten a postdoc in child psychology. And so when we started having some questions and concerns about our child, we had them do an evaluation. And as I look back on it now, it was basically kind of a half-butt sort of evaluation, if you will. Let's just leave it at that. And came to basically no conclusions. Now, we knew that there was something else going on, but we could not get any more information about it. And indeed, now we have lots of information. Almost anybody who really looks at the research and all that sort of thing, accepts that there's such a thing as ADHD. Still, that's one of the main issues we have. I still see parents, tons of them, saying, I don't believe there's any such thing as ADHD, and I'm sure not going to put my kid on medication. We hear this all the time. We hear it, you read about it on the internet, you hear about it on talk shows, podcasts, all that sort of thing. Like it doesn't really exist. Even though I've said this before, I'm kind of getting sick of it, but we have known about ADHD for 200 some odd years. I've forgotten what the guy's name was, but he was a Scottish physician, wrote about ADHD, described it. He didn't call it ADHD, of course, but he described it about 200 years ago. Anyway, so we've had it, that people have known about it, or at least that people in the medical professions anyway have known about it for 200 years. It's been treated with stimulant medication for almost 100 years. And we still have people, with great success I might add, and we still have people say, it's not a real thing. He's just a typical boy, or, oh, she's just shy, that kind of thing. In spite of the fact that we've got all kinds of information indicating that there are real differences in the brains of people with ADHD from people who don't have ADHD. And we don't want to say that ADHD is kind of a brain damage sort of thing, because it's not. But it is a serious condition, And it does cause a huge amount of discomfort and despair in life for the people who have it, especially the ones who do not get properly diagnosed and treated. Now, that's kind of a particular area of concern for me. I think I'm the only provider in my area who does adults with ADHD. And these are people who were never diagnosed, or if they were diagnosed, they were never treated, or they were only treated for 6 months or something like that. And they come in, and they're usually really down, if you will. Basically, they're sick of getting fired from jobs. They're sick of not being able to sustain relationships. They're just sick of what ADHD does to their lives. You know, you can't sustain relationships. Your ability to get any kind of certification, you know, whether it's a certification as an accountant or a certification as a mechanic, or, you know, they just have a hard time. And you know, I see these folks all the time. We do the workup. Yep, you got it. You have a problem. There's no doubt about it. And you need treatment. And as I've mentioned before, I get one of three responses. I get relief. Oh, thank God, now I know what it is. Or I get depression. Oh my God, I've wasted so much of my life. I'll never make it up. Da 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 da. Or anger. Why didn't somebody catch this earlier? Why not? Why didn't they catch it when I was a kid? Why did I have to go through, you know, etc. And I wonder a little bit about the name. If the name isn't the problem, attention deficit disorder sounds, I don't know, that doesn't sound like it's a strong enough name to explain all the disruptions in people's lives that it causes. And it's not even accurate. You know, it's not just attention that's the problem. It's basically the whole frontal lobe thing, and that's your executive function. And we well know that ADHDers do not have good working memory. Okay, working memory is the type of memory that means you want to just keep stuff in awareness till you get the job done. You know, somebody tells you to do three things, you get one of them done, and you forget about the other two. That's working memory, okay? And a lot of people have problems with that when they hit middle age. Okay, I'm not going to say that ADHDers are the only one who have troubles with that, but they have troubles with it right from the get-go, right from the start of life. I mean, it's and it causes a tremendous number of difficulties, you know, especially if they're around a bunch of adults who don't understand what's going on. You know, if a mother or a father who's, you know, got 2 kids or 3 kids and is trying to get everything done at one time, and you ask one child to go up to his or her room and do 3 things, and an hour later you check them and they've done 1 thing, and they're playing video games like nothing else has been asked of them. They don't remember the other things. That's their working memory being defective. But frequently they pay for it. They get blamed or punished or yelled at or whatever because they didn't do what they were told. Point of fact is, they can't do what they were told. They don't remember it. They don't have the cognitive capacity to handle that, to remember a number of things and keep it up here. They have to have it written. They have to have it where they can see it. Or they have to have one thing at a time. They cannot and will not be able to do multiple things just because you ask them for it. Okay, that's number one part of things. The other part, okay, time sense. Time. ADHDers have lousy sense of time progression. They don't recognize time the way people who are neurotypicals do. Most people who are neurotypical are aware of the passage of time, and they're pretty good at roughly estimating. That was 15 minutes ago, or that was an hour ago, or that sort of thing. Not so ADHDers. They just have a lousy sense of it, which is why we're always talking about having some kind of a timer. You know, a kitchen timer, a timer on their wrist, or, but having a timer. That's one of those things that they gotta have. But there are a bunch of other things. But the bottom line is that these are not attention things. These are executive functioning things. The executive functions are one of the 5 cognitive categories that neuropsychologists routinely look at. The others are attention, language, spatial processing, memory, and executive functions. Executive functions are basically all frontal lobe in the front part of the brain, and they are probably the most important thing for all of us functioning. They are what make us who we are, make us the people we are, and people with ADHD have weaknesses in that area, and there are a lot of possible explanations for that, but suffice to say, one of the main outcomes is that their executive functioning is not very good in general. So, what we spend hours and hours when we're trying to do treatment and things like that is, first of all, ideally, we try to externalize everything, okay? Since they can't keep it in here, we want it out where you can touch it, read it again, that sort of thing. Things like day timers, things like timers, things that go ding when the time is up and that sort of thing, and let you know that a certain amount of time has passed. That's serious stuff, okay? That is real serious. And we haven't even talked about, like, impulse control. That's a frontal lobe function as well. That's your executive functioning. You can modulate, you can be irritated, but you aren't immediately going into a rage, okay? As you who are parents of ADHD children know, emotional control is not exactly one of the strong suits of an ADHD child. They're what we call labile. They go, well, I'm not going to use the folksy expression, but it has to do with a windstorm. They just go off fast, let's put it that way. And I think, part of it is, we have a disorder. Now, it used to be called minimal brain disorder. Now, that's a serious sounding diagnosis. Minimal brain dysfunction. You would take that one seriously. Oh, this is attention? Well, shoot, everybody's had problems with attention. Everybody's had times where they were so distracted that they totally overlooked something. And we think of that as normal, which I think is why a lot of people don't take ADHD seriously. That's attention. I have troubles with attention sometimes. What's the big deal? Well, I fear that that's why people don't take it seriously. I mean, in spite of abundant research that says that the best thing for your child if they are diagnosed with attention deficit disorder is to treat them. Treatment typically involves medication, okay? Not fish oil, not weeds and seeds, herbs, all that kind of stuff. Not restricting their diets, none of that stuff has been proven to be effective. It doesn't work. But we keep seeing it, If you just buy this special Norwegian fish oil, it will cure your child's ADHD. Don't think so. There's zero research that proves that it's effective. I mean, we have had almost 100 years of treatment of ADHD with stimulant medication with remarkable results. I mean, it's just, it almost is 100%. Well, it's never 100% because there's always a couple of people who just don't quite fit in, but it is a recommended, well-researched treatment that is effective in like 85 to 90% of the people that are on the medication, and it does a number of things that are rather remarkable, really. I don't know how many of you have read about maturity levels with ADHD, but generally they're roughly maturity-wise, emotional-wise, an ADHD child is about 3 years or 30% behind their peer group. Okay? That means, well, it means a lot of things if you think about it, really. It's easier to understand if you think of them as being a younger child. But it's a big jump to kind of really incorporate that. But you think about like ADHDers. As drivers, they have more problems. They just do. Their driving records are not as good. They get into more accidents. And that's, it's like, well, why is that? Well, because what's the main thing you have to do to drive? You certainly don't need to be a genius. You just need to be paying attention. And guess what? That's not always an easy thing for them to do. And if you add to that the idea that they're 3 years or 30% below, my God, that means, what are they? 16 years old is when you get your license in most states. So that means you're like 13. Would you give a 13-year-old a car and say, bye, see you at midnight, or whatever curfew is? Probably not. But we do that all the time. Our parents of ADHD children do that all the time. And again, attention doesn't sound like a big deal. Attention doesn't sound like a real important problem. If we think of it more as an executive functioning problem or a higher cognitive functioning problem or even minimal brain dysfunction, people would take it more seriously, I think. And I think that's an issue we've got. And I think that's why we get so many people with no real research support just saying, oh, that stuff doesn't work. Or, oh, that causes who knows what kind of symptoms that are hard to explain. Why would that medication cause that kind of a side effect? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, so when you're looking through your emails or you're looking through YouTube or Facebook or wherever, watch out for the claims about ADHD. You need to take them with a grain of salt. And look up the flippin' research yourself. Look up, well, CHAD is probably the main organization that provides, some kind of research and balance support. But, there are websites that feature research that has been well done, well documented, replicated, and so on. And those are the things you need to believe. the things that are sort of iffy and are based on, one person's experience, you probably don't want to go to the bank with those. A single case study is what we call those. And that just means you took one person and you did one thing to that one person and you maybe got this result, although typically it's based on some subjective observation and not any detailed or documented kinds of research instruments. So you can't really take that to the bank, and you probably don't want to bet your child's future on those kinds of treatments. Okay? I could go into this for a long time, but I'm going to hold myself back. Maybe later on we'll get into some of this again, but these things are serious, and what most people don't know is, where do the diagnostic categories come from? Well, basically what they come out of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. And basically it's a committee that gets together and decides what should be in the big diagnostic book. Sometimes they do a great job, and sometimes, or some things are not so great. And I'm not sure what they've done more recently with attention deficit disorder. But understand, in spite of the name, it is serious. Very serious. And you need to treat it seriously and treat it as the neurologic/medical condition that it is. And don't look for magic, okay? Anything you do with ADHD is going to need to be done pretty much lifetime. The medication, any kind of neurofeedback treatments, computerized cognitive retraining, which I'm generally a fan of, but you don't get to say after 6 weeks, oh, it's perfect, everything's good. Okay, and frankly, that's something we're not 100% sure of. That's still being researched, but take it seriously. It's important. Learn what you're talking about. It's not a belief system, okay? It's science. We have the knowledge. Find it. Okay? Okay, this is Dr. Terry James Gingras. This is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, and this is the show for making the world safe for ADHD. Because as I keep saying, people who think outside the box are the people who make major advances in society, and who knows, maybe your child will be the one that does it. So I will catch you next time, and thanks for watching.